Right now, this list of to-dos is static. In order to start making it a little more dynamic, we need a way to add new to-dos to the list. For that, we'll create a helper function. And since Create React App comes pre-configured with Jest for testing, we'll build this helper function in a test-driven style. Let's start by adding a lib directory under source. And I'm going to add a file to lib, which I'll call todohelpers.js. And I'll add a second file to lib called todohelpers.test.js. And at the top of the todohelpers.test file, I'm going to add an import to add todo from todohelpers. And with that in place, I'm going to jump into the terminal and run npm test to fire up Jest. And you see that I have a failing test, and that's because my test suite must contain at least one test. So I'm just going to paste in some test code that I have prepared, and let's take a look at it. This test follows a pretty standard structure, often referred to as arrange, act, assert. So if we look at this, we have the arrange portion of our test, where we have a start to-dos variable that has an array with two to-do objects in it, a new to-do, which is going to be the object that we're going to try to add to our list, and then a const called expected that represents what we want the list to look like at the end of running add to-do. The second section is referred to as act, and this is where we actually call the code that we're trying to test. And here we're assigning whatever comes out of add to-do to result, and we're passing it in start to-dos and new to-do. And then finally, we have the assert part of the test, where we actually set our expectation, and this is what's going to determine if the test passes or fails. So with our test in place, I'm going to save that. Jest will automatically rerun our tests, and this time we're going to get a type error because add to do is not a function, because we haven't defined it yet. So let's go to to-do helpers, and we'll add our add to do function. So for that, I'm going to say export const add to do, and I'm going to set that to equal a function. And now that our function's defined, we can save the file. Jest will rerun, and we're still failing, but now we're failing for a different reason. We expected an array, and we received undefined. We can scroll up a little bit here, and we'll see that it actually expected a specific value, and that's based on what we assigned here to expected. So let's make this test pass. So I'm going to jump into to-do helpers, and if you remember from our test where we call add to do, we're passing in the array, which we'll just refer to as list here, and then we're passing in the new object that we want added to the list. And since I have an array, I can use array methods. So let's say I want to call list.push, and I want to push that new item into the array, and then I want to return the list. When I save that, my test reruns, and everything's passing. I'm going to go back to to-do helper, and I'm going to add a second test. I'm going to scroll down, and I'll paste this in, and we'll see that this test is called add to do should not mutate the existing to-do array. I have the same setup with start to-dos, a new to-do, and my expected array. I'm calling add to do with the same arguments, getting the result back, but this time I'm checking to make sure that start to-dos and result are not referring to the same array. So if I save this, we'll see that a test fails. And the problem here is that by calling list.push in this function, I'm mutating the original array. And what I need to do is get a new array back that has the items from the first array plus the new object. So we can accomplish this by updating our code here and using concat rather than push. And we can just return the result of that because concat will add the new item into a new array and return it. So I'll save that, and now we have two passing tests. And now that we have these unit tests in place, we can make all kinds of changes to this with confidence that if we change the behavior in such a way that our pass fail, it'll tell us right away. So I'm just going to do a little bit of refactoring. So I'm going to get rid of these curly braces and that return, and I can make this a one-line function. I'll save it, test run again, and I know I'm good. Now let's say I wanted to change the way I'm doing this. So instead of using concat, I want to use the spread operator. So I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to say I want the list including the new item at the end of the list, and I'll save it. And because my test passed again, I know that this is a valid replacement that updates my array, giving me the new item, and also doesn't mutate the existing array.